Have you ever felt that light touch? Almost unintentional, but that left you thinking about it for the rest of the day? And then came the doubt that won't leave you alone. Was that just politeness? Or was it a secret sign of attraction? The truth is that the female body speaks, and those who understand this silent language win over, not with words, but with presence. This video is for you who are tired of not understanding what really it takes place in a woman's mind and body. If you've ever experienced that scene where she touches you smiling, but the next day seems cold or distant, then you're exactly where you need to be right now. In feminine psychology applied to attraction and relationships, each gesture has a code. Nothing is by chance, and touch is one of the most powerful and misinterpreted signals by men. Only 2% can really decipher what this gesture means emotionally, and these 2% stand out because they know how to act, when to react, and what to avoid. Do you want to be part of this 2%? Then continue, because what you're going to learn today will change the way you see any woman, especially the one you think is impossible. Here, we don't talk about superficial seduction. We talk about emotional strategy, about effective intelligence. This channel is not about cheap techniques. It's about how you, as a man, can access the deepest feminine instincts and build real, memorable, and magnetic attraction. And it all starts where few pay attention. The touch, the way she touches, the place, the intensity. All of this hides truths that she will never tell you. But what unfiltered feminine psychology reveals, you will realize that there are touches that test, touches that connect, and touches that push away. And if you don't know how to recognize each of them, you will continue to be stuck in the same cycles, falling in love with someone who doesn't want you, or worse, losing someone who could be completely involved with you if you had read the signs right. So listen to what I'm going to tell you now, because this is where everything starts to change. Today you're going to learn something that can completely change the way you interpret women. And I'm not exaggerating. Feminine touch is one of the most intense languages of feminine psychology applied to attraction and relationships. And what seems like a simple gesture can actually be a key that opens doors to a woman's emotional mind. But most men, maybe even you, have never been trained to perceive this. You think it's all a coincidence, that she touched you because she was excited or because you're nice. But let me tell you, women don't touch you by chance. There's a whole world behind a simple contact with the arm, the leg, the back of the neck. And when you understand this universe, you start playing a completely different game. A game where you have the advantage. I remember one of my students who came to me frustrated. He was talking about a woman who always touched him when they talked. On the shoulder, on the hand, on the knee. He felt something strong. He thought she was interested. But days later, she started to ignore him. He didn't understand. He was lost. He thought he had done something wrong, but his mistake was something else. He interpreted the touch with male logic, and female touch does not obey male logic. It is emotional, it is symbolic, it is strategic. What that woman was doing was testing. Yes, she was sending signals to see if he noticed. And since he didn't notice, she lost interest. Do you understand how serious this is? A single detail, a touch, can be the difference between awakening attraction or being forgotten. You're here because you want to understand, win over, and keep women emotionally and strategically. And it all starts with decoding these signals. So stay with me until the end, because I'm going to reveal the 3 types of touch that most activate female desire. And I'll go further. You'll learn what to respond to, how to react, and how to leave her completely intrigued by you. But first I want to know, have you ever experienced something similar? She touched you, looked at you, and then walked away without explanation? Comment below, I've experienced this, or I felt this touch, if this has happened to you. Your comment may open the eyes of another man who is also trying to understand what she meant without saying anything. When she touches your shoulder while talking, or places her hand lightly on yours during a conversation, many men think it is just empathy or some other feminine habit. But if you pay close attention, you will realize that this type of touch has a much greater emotional charge than it seems. Applied feminine psychology shows that this gesture, however subtle it may be, is an emotional test. A silent but decisive test. She is trying to understand if you are a man who conveys security, who knows how to maintain his own energy even when faced with intimate contact. Because for her, touch is like an emotional probe. She wants to know, is he just fun? Or does he have the emotional structure to contain me? Many men make mistakes here because they react too eagerly or too enthusiastically. They think that touch is a green light to move on, when in fact it is just the first phase of an unconscious selection process. Female body language is full of hidden messages, and when she chooses to touch you, especially in places like your arm, hand, or shoulder. It is because she is reading your emotions. She wants to feel if you are easily shaken, if you lose control, if you change your tone, all in silence, all in detail. And this is where your power comes in. Knowing how to differentiate a touch of social empathy from a touch of genuine interest. The touch of empathy is accompanied by generic smiles and words of support, but it quickly fades away. The touch of interest, on the other hand, happens at specific moments with more intense eye contact and a pause in speech. It is deeper, more calculated. It's as if she were saying, without saying, "I'm giving you a chance to show who you are." And if you respond in an emotionally mature way, with presence and calm, something inside her will light up. So don't fall into the trap of ignoring or interpreting superficially. Women don't touch you for nothing. They touch you to test your energy. And if they feel that your energy is unstable, they'll back off. Now tell me in the comments, have you ever noticed when a woman touched you differently, as if she was trying something? Comment "test touch" if you felt this way. Or, "I didn't notice, but now I understand" if you fell into this without knowing it. This will really help other men to identify with it too. If at some point she gently touched your arm, touched your back as she walked past you, or even lingered a little longer on your chest during a conversation, understand, it was no accident. Feminine psychology applied to attraction. And Relationships explains that this type of touch activates a region of the brain linked to unconscious arousal. It is a sensory trigger that directly affects her emotional memory, especially when there is intention behind the gesture. Few men realize it, but this specific touch is like a hidden code. It triggers reactions that not even she fully understands, and that is when you, if you are attentive, begin to dominate the game strategically. There is a huge difference between casual touching, done out of politeness or custom, and intentional touching, the kind that carries an emotional purpose behind it. Casual touching is quick, without looking, without pausing. Intentional touching, however subtle, carries tension in the air. It is accompanied by a change in the pace of the conversation, a more conscious approach, a deeper look. And the most curious thing is that often, not even the woman knows that she is doing this strategically. Her body knows, her instincts know. And if you know how to react, calmly, firmly, and presently, the effect can be devastating in a good way. She starts to feel something different for you without understanding exactly why. It's as if you become an emotional anchor in her mind. And this happens because this type of touch releases neurotransmitters like oxytocin, the hormone of bonding and trust. In other words, if she touches you like this and you react in the right way, you enter her emotional field without having to force anything. It's subtle, it's psychological, it's powerful. And here's the phrase that needs to be engraved in your mind. This touch creates an emotional anchor. If you know how to respond, she'll desire you without understanding why. Now, I want you to tell me, have you ever experienced a situation in which she touched you like this, in a different, more intense way? Comment "deep touch" if you've been through this, or "now I understand what happened," if it finally made sense to you. This helps a lot to create a space for exchange here in the comments. There is a type of touch that is deceiving. At first glance, it seems like a loving, gentle, even intimate gesture. But in reality, it is one of the clearest signs that you are being put in the friend zone. Female behavioral psychology is very precise on this point. This touch, which can be on the back while she greets you, or a pat on the shoulder when you say something funny, does not carry emotional tension, does not generate hormonal connection, and, most importantly, it is not desired. It is a neutral touch, a social touch. And if you do not recognize this quickly, you will end up falling into a mistake that 98% of men make, interpreting it as interest and responding in a needy or desperate way. This is when many people start to overdo it. They try to create more closeness, initiate physical contact without context, send too many messages, become predictable, and end up forcing a connection that, emotionally, no longer exists. And the more you insist, the more she pushes you away, because the female mind is very sensitive to this type of energy. A man who reacts to neutral touch with neediness communicates scarcity, and scarcity never generates attraction. But here's the most important part. This touch, as frustrating as it may seem, can become a strategic turning point if you know how to react. When you realize that she touched you in a neutral way, instead of reacting with need, react with emotional neutrality. Change the game, silently. Instead of getting closer, move away a little. Reduce your attention, reduce your words, maintain your presence, but do so firmly. Applied feminine psychology shows that this change creates an internal contrast in her and can arouse doubt and curiosity. She starts to wonder if she misunderstood you, if you are really available, and then the dynamic changes, because desire is born from space, not from pressure. If you know how to deal with this touch like someone reading a sign and adjust your behavior with emotional intelligence, you will leave the friend zone without having to ask for anything. Tell me in the comments if you have ever felt this type of touch that seemed like affection, but deep down it seemed like it was going nowhere. Write neutral touch, or I have reacted wrong, if this situation made sense to you now. This will help other men not fall into the same trap. There is a form of touch that doesn't even need to happen to generate a deep and lasting effect on a woman's mind. It's what feminine psychology calls projected touch, an indirect touch that works with the power of anticipation, silence, and male presence. When applied well, it activates the same brain circuits linked to desire and emotional addiction. It's like pulling a trigger that creates an expectation in her body. She misses something that hasn't even happened yet. And that's exactly what makes this technique so powerful, because female desire isn't activated just by physical contact, but by the emotional tension that precedes the touch. When you master this, you become unforgettable. It works like this. You maintain a firm presence, eye contact, controlled breathing, and speak calmly. At a certain point, you move your hand closer, but don't touch. You let the distance say what words don't. Then, you change the subject, subtly pulling back, without losing the intensity of your gaze. It is at this moment that something inside her begins to move. She creates, on her own, the image of the touch that never happened. And the more she thinks about it, the more your body takes up space in her mind. The secret is not to rush into contact. The secret is to make her want that contact. This requires self-control, emotional intelligence, and reading the right moment. This type of strategy is advanced but extremely effective because it creates an emotional anchor that she builds herself. The touch didn't happen physically, but it happened inside her, in her imagination, in her expectation, in her unresolved desire. And this is the type of desire that sticks. That's where you differentiate yourself from regular men. So remember this phrase: you don't need to touch her, just make her want your touch. Now tell me in the comments, have you noticed that she started to get more restless, more curious, even without you doing anything other than looking and getting closer? Comment, touch without touching, if you've seen this effect happen, or I'm going to try this. If you want to try this technique with emotional intelligence, this creates exchange and engagement with those who are going through the same journey as you. Today you began to see that feminine touch goes far beyond what meets the eye. It is not just physical contact between skins. It is a silent language, an unconscious strategy, and an emotional map that reveals what a woman feels without her having to say a single word. Feminine psychology applied to attraction and relationships shows us that every gesture, every touch, every approach carries an intention. And when you begin to decipher these signals, you leave the group of ordinary men, those who live in the dark, thinking that everything depends on luck or beauty, and enter the select group of 2% who know exactly what they are doing. You learned about the touch of emotional connection, the touch of unconscious arousal, the neutral touch that drives away, and most importantly, the invisible touch that awakens desire without needing to touch. This is not theory. This is advanced emotional practice. It is the kind of knowledge that silently transforms you into a man who makes an effortless presence, who does not need to chase after someone because he has already understood how to create attraction with emotional intelligence. Now imagine if you could go further, because what comes next is even more intense. In the next video, I'll show you the 3 forbidden places that, when touched in the right way, make a woman think about you all day long. These are spots that activate her emotional center in a direct but subtle way, places that men ignore out of fear, ignorance, or lack of sensitivity. But when you understand how and when to touch them, you activate something in her that is much stronger than simple attraction. You create memories, you create emotional presence, and that's when she starts looking for you, thinking about you without knowing why, feeling your absence as if you were an invisible presence. So if this video opened your mind, imagine what's coming in the next one. Click here now and dive into this universe that only 2% of men know about. And before you go, write here in the comments, I want to discover the forbidden places, or ready for the next level. This shows that you are committed to this transformation and helps other men to join us on this journey.